Hello there, I'm here today to ask you a very simple question, and that is, would you like to know what the beauty of selling one-to-many is? Well, the beauty of selling one-to-many is how goddamn simple it is, right? Step 1, you have a product or a service. Step 2, you make sure that product or a service solves a problem, right? This is business 101. Step 3, you find people on this vast green earth that we live on who have the problem that your problem or service solves. This is getting clients 101. Step 4, you advertise and you tell the people who have the problem that you're going to show them how to solve it, and you're going to do it live, so then they click on the ad or the video that you've put out to the market. Step 5 is that people hopefully sign up for this webinar. Step 6 is that you get them to show up, and if you're not sure how to get people to show up, I have a bunch of videos on how to get people to show up. Step 7, you then present and to the people who have the problem that your problem or that your product or service solves, and you show them how you solved it for yourself and for other people. Step 8, you then offer to solve the problem for them, so you make them an offer. Step 9, they want the problem solved and they know that you can help them do it faster. Step 10, they then pay you to solve it faster, so you make money. And then step 11, you do it again and again and again until you're rich, right? Pretty simple. That's how business works. But then, somehow, in some way, I don't even know how, so many of you end up digging yourself into a great big fucking hole, like that hole that you see right there. And a hole that is impossible to climb out of if you dig too deep. And this is a metaphorical hole that fucks up your entire webinar process, and then you make no sales, right? So after putting in all the hard work that you've put in to get people there, you've advertised, right? You've written the webinar script, you've built the webinar slides, which, as you can see here, we are building hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of slides for the webinars that we're doing. You build all the systems on things like Go High Level, and they all go to waste because of this one thing. And your head hits the pillow that night, and you think to yourself, what even just happened? Why did people not book a call? Or even worse, why did people not buy if you're going direct to car? None of us want that, right? We want a delicious, long night's sleep, action-packed with REM sleep, knowing that we're safe and sound and that we are richer than we were when we woke up. But in order to do that, right, we need to fill this hole. Because while selling one-to-many is simple, no one ever said it was easy, especially not me, because there are intricacies. And these intricacies, when they stand alone, they don't really matter too much, right? But you can always get away with just one fault here and there, right? One McDonald's isn't going to destroy 5 years. You've been going to the gym, you've been eating clean, right? 6 chicken selects isn't going to fuck you too hard, right? But when you allow these things to build up, in this case, we're not talking about McDonald's, we're talking about sales presentations. They can be fatal, right? And they can damage your sales presentation enough to the point where your conversion rates drop by 5% or even 10% if you get this really, really wrong. So just like on a standard one-to-one sales call, let's say you and me are having a conversation, right? One bad move can change the entire direction of the entire conversation. So when we multiply that bad move across hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of people on a webinar, that small bad move that you make can accumulate to become a gargantuan fuck up, right? Nobody wants to make a gargantuan fuck up. If it's your own webinar, you don't want that. If it's your client's webinar, it's even worse. Now, they're going to be pissed off with you if it's a client, and no one likes having unhappy clients, right? So what is this? What am I talking about? What is this problem, right? What is the biggest small fuck up that I see people make on webinars? Because, and I'll tell you where I've got this from, right? This is why I'm making this video. It's why I'm so emotionally charged right now. It's why I go, how make webinars great again? Because almost every single consulting client that comes to us for help on their webinars all struggle with this one thing, right? It's pretty much the bottleneck for every single one of them. All of them know how to get people there. But is it a mistake when you're presenting? Okay, no, it's not that deep. I've made plenty of mistakes in this video already. Is the stream lagging or the webinar lagging, right? No, that's not really that deep either. Is it poor slide design? No, probably not. That's not that deep unless your slides are well and truly atrocious, right? It's the fact that some of you are simply saying too much, okay? And in fact, I'm going to correct that statement for you. You say too much, but then you say too little. I'm going to explain to you what I mean by this so you know what I mean, right? So I've taught this to so many copywriters, growth operators, and even some of my staff, right? And every single time I say it, they all get this aha moment. And then they go and then they make a bunch of money with their webinars, right? That's what they pay me for. And even I get proud when I read this in my own webinars because I've applied this principle, okay? So let's use a math example because numbers are easier to understand than human emotion, right? Let's say you watching this right now are selling a TikTok shop BizOp offer. Right? That's what we're selling in this example. So we currently have 2 agency clients in this market at the moment. So it's an example that's fresh off the top of my head. So let's say you do your basic market research, right? And for the sake of simplicity, let's say that you identify 10, right? For the sake of numbers, 10 key objections that this market would have when it comes to becoming a TikTok shop affiliate, okay? Obviously, there's way more because people use fucking anything as an objection, but let's go with 10 to keep things simple here. So in theory, we now have 10 whole objections that we need to handle in our webinar presentation. Now, the key word here that I want you to understand, and the reason this is based on maths, is these are whole objections, okay? So 1, 2, 3, whole numbers, okay? What most people will do is they'll say, hey, I'll just handle these 10 objections and I'll have a 6-figure webinar, bloody brilliant, right? But the big problem with this, and this is what we're going to be discussing in this video, is that they are lazy when they handle these objections, okay? I'm going to say this again. You are being lazy when you handle objections, assuming you already have a webinar, right? And because you're being lazy when you handle objections, you are creating more objections without even realizing it, okay? It's like cutting off Hydra's head and 3 more are growing back. So every objection you try and attack, 3 more are coming up because you're handling it lazily, okay? So let me give you an example. Let's say we're trying to handle the objection of having enough time in my day to work on the business or affiliate in this case, right? What most people would do, probably in the introduction, is they would say something like this. This is an average objection handle, right? And I got this from my newsletter, subscribe by the way. And being an affiliate doesn't require much time at all. You can do this just working a couple hours a day, okay? And then they move on to the next point. Now on the surface of it here, right? This seems like a good way to handle this objection, okay? You might not see that there's much wrong with this, okay? Because people don't forget objections, by the way, if you don't bring them up. This is a very important point. In fact, anything that you don't up in the webinar will only be amplified and leave the prospects asking themselves why you haven't mentioned it. So we always bring up the objections, which we've done here, right? But let's reframe this to look at it from the prospect's perspective, right? Not from what we deem to be good. If I'm a single mother of a 4-year-old child, right? I'm clearly not. But I'm working a HR job to pay the bills, okay? I'm dropping my kid off at nursery every single morning. I'm not sleeping properly. My washing machine has been broken for 10 days and I still haven't found time to fix it. If you tell me that I only need a couple hours a day to work on my TikTok shop affiliate stuff, I simply do not believe you. And in fact, I will actually probably be pissed off because you have just assumed that some of us just have enough time in our day to just post TikTok videos, right? Nor do I have just a couple hours a day. And the reason I'm bringing up this as an example is because we actually have a lot of mums in this target market. I'm not just going mad, right? So now, not only have you failed to handle this one whole objection, you've actually kind of pissed me off a bit, right? So this one whole objection has now had an additional 0.5 added to it because we didn't handle it, and now you've pissed me off a little bit. So we've now got 1.5's worth of an objection because you tried to handle it, but you were lazy. Because you were lazy, you actually made it worse. You didn't reframe the way that I think about my time. And this is why it's important. And you didn't tell me why it's important enough for me to actually find the time to do this. So like I said earlier, you said too much and then you said too little. So too much is that you introduced the objection, right? You went for the kill, but then too little is the fact that you didn't handle it properly. So if you want to properly handle objections, what you need to do is you need to flesh them out. You need to give them a bit of room to breathe. You need to reframe their relationship with the objection, okay? You want to lift the weight off the prospect's shoulders as they're watching, and you want to keep that yes momentum going through the webinar, right? And not all yes momentum is just when you ask for a 1 in the chat or you say, give me a yes in the chat, right? It's about keeping the audience with you behind the camera at all times, right? Not just in the chat. So how would I do this, okay? How would I go about handling this objection? Well, what I would do is I would probably say something like this. So this is my version, again, from my newsletter. So, and being an affiliate doesn't require much time at all. And don't worry, I'm not naive. I know for a lot of you, finding time can be difficult. You might be working a lot. You might have other commitments and other responsibilities. But if you had a way to make sure that every video brought in sales as well as views, so your time making videos was actually well spent, then you could spend just a couple hours a day on this in the beginning until you're at the point where you can reduce hours at work and go full-time as a creator, which is exactly what insert name, Sarah, did when they started using this system. They went from spending 5 hours a day making videos that got views but no sales to spending just 2 hours a day making high quality videos that actually reflected in their brand payouts at the end of the month. Now, the first thing you will probably notice about my objection handling is the length of it, which we'll talk a little bit about later on. But after reading that, can you see the difference? Okay? Can you see now how we've not only acknowledged the objection, but we have completely spun it in the way they think about it as well? I hope so, okay? So let's dissect each step of what I just did there to make sure this actually hits home for you, because boy, oh boy, when you learn how to do this, God will bless your bank account, right? So this is the first line. The first line is, and don't worry, I'm not naive, right? What we're doing here is we're building trust and we're putting the prospect at ease immediately, okay? It's important. The moment that we introduce an objection is also the moment when we most need to settle it down. And the example I like to give here, imagine you're in the kitchen and you're with a friend, right? And a bang goes off in the kitchen. And if neither of you know what it is and no one says anything about it, you're both looking around, you're fucking thinking that someone's breaking in, you're thinking a gun's gone off down the road, you're thinking, what the hell is that, right? But if one of you, if you turn around and your friend's there, it's just like, oh, sorry, I just dropped a box. You're like, phew, it puts you at ease straight away. And the bang in this case is the objection. And in addition, right, nobody likes the kind of person who says, oh, you can just do this and you can live like me, right? Because everyone knows that success requires some kind of hard work, right? Rich people know this because they work hard, and poor people know that being rich requires hard work. Everyone knows it, right? And to quote the late, great David Ogilvy, right? Your customer isn't stupid, she's your wife, right? So your audience isn't stupid either. So we need to acknowledge this objection and then immediately settle them back down, ready for us to continue to handle this. So we're just leveling them out a little bit here. Then in line number 2, what we're saying is, I know for a lot of you, finding time can be difficult. You might be working a lot. You might have other commitments and other responsibilities. So what we're doing here is we're calling out the reasons why this is still in the back of their mind, right? Again, we need to show the prospects that we deeply understand the situation that they are in and that what we are selling is genuinely built for them, okay? Because it is, right? And if what we can do is drop these kind of like micro understandings throughout the webinar, we build so much more trust and rapport with the audience that by the time we show them the offer, there is no question about whether they want it or not. The only question that we want them to have is, what do I need to do to get it, okay? Line number 3. But if you had a way to make sure that every video brought in sales as well as views, so your time making videos was actually well spent, and here what we're doing is we're reframing the relationship with the objection. We're reframing and we're showing them that time spent working does not equal more money made. And this is important because what this links back to in our case is the unique mechanism that we're going to be teaching on the webinar, which is about how to actually get sales from TikTok Shop, not just views, right? So we're creating this curiosity loop. And remember this, it's hard to get people to change their stance on things like this, right? It's far easier to get them to simply just reframe the way they think about it rather than to try and like squash it and handle it. We're just trying to spin it in a different way. Line number 4, then you could spend just a couple hours a day on this in the beginning until you're at the point where you can reduce hours at work or go full-time as a creator. So what we're doing here is that we want to show them that they're not going to have to do this forever. It's just a small portion of their life that needs to be spent putting in a little bit of work, but once it's done, they get their entire life back because then they don't have to go to their job anymore, okay? And not only that, we're now starting to paint the picture to them and starting to future pace and put them in their desired state. We're setting the right expectations. We're not trying to make big jumps, right? Because people learn gradually, which is why we want to introduce our ideas on webinars in terms of how we're going to get them from A to B rather than trying to jump A to C. We're saying, look, you're going to have to do this at the beginning, but then you can go full-time as a creator and then you can work more hours and then make more money, right? We're breaking it down. We're chunking it down for them. Line number 5, social proof, right? This is exactly what insert name did when they started using this system, 5 hours a day to 2 hours a day, that actually reflected in their brand payouts at the end of the month. Now, this is the icing on the cake. We want to show them an example of someone who was in their situation, who also did this, to reinforce that what we're saying actually works. If we sprinkle a little bit of desired state in there, here and there, like we have done in this example, you're off to the races, right? And we don't want to make these desired state sentences vague, right? We want to make them specific. So, like I've done here, directly reflecting in their brand payouts. Only someone who's a TikTok Shop affiliate knows what that is. And when you combine all of these elements together, objections actually get properly handled. You're not cutting off Hydra's head anymore and letting 3 more grow back. You're not pissing people off. You're not being lazy. You're not skimming over things, and you aren't killing the webinar's momentum, right? And there are 1,000,001 different ways that you can do this, but all that matters is that it's done correctly, okay? You can do this by telling stories. You can do this in the training section. You can do this in the webinar introduction. You can do this when you make the offer. You can do this in the pitch, and you can do this in the close. It does not matter. Now, let's recap, okay? So this is how most people would handle the objection of not having time with this offer, right? They would say this. But this is how a webinar wizard like myself would handle the objection of not having time, right? And this is why I say that most people are being fucking lazy when they handle objections. Yes, doing this is longer. And yes, it requires you to write longer and better copy. But what's the alternative, right? Have a shit webinar that just doesn't convert, right? No thanks. I don't want a shit webinar that doesn't convert. This is also why the webinars that me and my agency write, if you ever join any of them and funnel hack us, are typically longer than the average, right? Because we leave no stone unturned and we cover everything in the depth and the detail that is actually required to turn prospects into buyers. If you miss things out, they don't disappear, okay? You have to bring them up and you have to cover them. Whereas most people will just throw an objection out there thinking that they have done enough, but in reality, what they've actually done is they've opened a can of worms in the prospect's mind, and then they brush over it so fast that the idea has never got time to settle, and they build up over time again and again and again until no one bloody pays, okay? Now, like I said earlier, there are intricacies when they stand alone, they don't matter too much, but when you allow them to build up over a sales presentation, they damage your conversion rates by 5 or even 10% if you get it really wrong. So the example that I gave about not having time to be a TikTok Shop affiliate is just one example, okay? And if I were to show the same lack of effort in handling the other 10 major objections that we identified in our market research, then these will stack up throughout the webinar, and before you know it, you have done a 90-minute presentation, and for some reason, people are still on the fence, and they're no closer to making a purchasing decision or actually becoming a client. And the whole point of a webinar is that you want people to be fighting in numbers to claim the spots for your offer or whatever you're selling, right? Not still questioning whether this is right for them or not. So how can you actually apply this in your webinars, right? Well, step 1 is you need a webinar to improve in the first place, okay? So if you don't have a webinar, write one, okay? Use the Fladlien framework, get something down on a doc, and stop procrastinating. I promise you, it's not that difficult to write a webinar. There are probably people way more stupid than you watching this who have been able to do this and make a lot of money doing it. So if you're not a complete idiot who can't write any copy, you can do this, right? Step 2, go through everything that you wrote in the webinar and ask yourself honestly, have I done enough here? Okay? Because if you have done enough, you will know it. And if you haven't done enough, you will know it too. So what you need to do is you need to look at whatever you are introducing and whenever you're introducing a new idea. And you need to ask yourself, have I explained this as well as I could have? Have I introduced an idea that hasn't been addressed previously? And will the prospect be at ease after I explain this to them? Okay, and if the answer to all of these is yes, then you need to go to step 3, which is to go back through the webinar again before you turn it into a slide deck and do the exact same thing that you did in step 2, except this time you need to ask yourself, does this now flow well with the new content that I've added in here? And am I confident enough to show this to the market? And last but not least, do I think this could be better? Okay, could I frame the copy better? Could I frame the introduction better? Is there anything I've missed out? And if you are certain on all of that, then go and build the slides and go and make some fucking money, right? Remember, we want our prospects to be confident and clear when we make them an offer. And if they're not filled with confidence in you, in themselves, and in the vehicle, they won't convert. And if they're not clear that this is for them, and they're not clear that you're the one to help them, and they're not clear that this is the vehicle that will get them there, then they won't convert. So what we need to do is we need to instill confidence and clarity at every single stage in our webinar. And we do this by doing exactly what I've just shown you how to do, but we do it throughout the entire webinar. Not just in the intro, not just in the training, not just in the pitch, the entire goddamn thing, okay? Now, I hope this has been as useful to you as it has been for me. I've made a lot of money doing this, so I want you to reread this or rewatch this again in a few days to really let it sink in, right? Practice these principles in your copy. Don't shy away from your objections. Address them, explain them, reframe them, spin them around, freshen them up, throw them up in the sky, and get them bloody gone. Here's to more money and a better webinar. And if you want to learn more about what we do with webinars here at Webinar Wizards, then just check the link in the description, okay? Lots of love, the Webinar Wizard himself.